Okay, we are now recording.
Hello. The League of Women Voters White Bear Lake area welcomes you to this virtual forum for our candidates running for Lake Elmo City Council. This forum is not open to the public and is not being live streamed. The reason for that is to ensure minimal chance of cable interruption. It is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. In addition, local cable stations will replay this forum on a schedule determined by their station. Candidates, if for some reason your internet connection is lost, please call in using your phone. My name is Liz Nordling, and I do not live in Lake Elmo, and I will be moderating the forum this evening. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, longtime, nonpartisan volunteer organization that encourages citizens to participate in government. Our mission is to support voter education and voters' rights. While the League studies and takes stands on issues, we do not support or oppose any candidate or political party. The goal of our forums is for voters to learn more about the positions of the candidates who will be on the ballot on November 3rd. All candidates for this race were invited to participate, and our candidates are Katrina Beckstrom, Jeff Holtz, and Matt Howe. Candidates will give their opening statements in alphabetical order. After that, the beginning speaker will be rotated for each question, and then closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order. We will now begin with opening statements, and we will start with Katrina Beckstrom.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the forum, and to the citizens who have chosen to participate in the election process by learning more about the candidates. I'm Katrina Beckstrom, and I am excited to be running for Lake Elmo City Council. In 2017, my partner David and I, along with my two stepdaughters, joined the Lake Elmo community, a community that I had admired for many years because so many things about it reminded me of my hometown. For the past 3 years, I have had the privilege of serving on the Lake Elmo Public Safety Committee, where I first became engaged and interested in city government. I was compelled to run for city council as a result of my experience on the committee, but I was also influenced by the events of 2020, which have shown me just how important it is for us as individuals, as well as a city, to be prepared for the unexpected. Our city has grown over the past few years, and we are now starting to see some of the infrastructure, services, and resources have not adequately evolved with our growth. I believe this is a result of not having enough of the right knowledge set at the table to help drive key components of our city's strategic plan, such as public safety, which can leave our city in a vulnerable position. What I will bring to the City Council is a strong commitment and dedication to public service with over 10 years of public safety knowledge and experience. I will also bring more than 20 years of professional leadership, quality, and strategic planning experience in corporate healthcare. I hope by November 3rd, I will have earned your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next with his opening statement is Jeff Holtz.
Hi, my name is Jeff Holtz, and I first want to thank the White Bear Lake Area League of Women Voters for this opportunity, and also for their long history of helping to inform voters. I'm running for Lake Elmo City Council to serve our community by listening, by being information-driven, and by looking to honor our past while planning for our future. We have a rich and storied history here in Lake Elmo. We also have a tremendous future if we choose to use our voice and our votes to elect public servants who will be authentic and honest and who have a proven history of contributing to our community. I have that track record as a second-term planning commissioner, as a Lake Elmo representative for the $800 million 3M settlement, and as a planning representative for our city for School District 834's long-term planning team. As a civil servant for over a decade, who has created auditing and communication programs from scratch, I know what it takes to serve the public. As a parent of 2 young children who are just starting their experience here in Lake Elmo, I understand the concerns of our community regarding our health and our safety, our infrastructure needs, and the shared concern that we properly plan for our future. As we move forward tonight, my priorities for how to serve you, our community, will be discussed more in depth. And again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Now with his opening statement is Matt Howe.
Great, thank you. Thanks for putting this together. I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm Matt Howe, resident of Lake Elmo since 2014. My wife and 3 children, we live in the Sunfish Ponds neighborhood. I have 2 kids at Lake Elmo Elementary School and 1 at Oakland Middle School. And my teacher is a 7th grade English teacher at Oakland. So a little bit of background about me. I'm a 22-year commercial lending veteran. Right now I work for a bank out of Kansas City called UMB. We have a division in Bloomington where I lead our credit collection department and client service group. So with my job, often when we lend money, there's multiple stakeholders involved, and it often you have people on opposing sides when you're dealing with money, business owners. And so my job requires that I be very pragmatic, hear stories from both sides, try to help find solutions. That's a big part of why I'm running. The city has grown immensely since we've been here in the last 6 years, and the tax base has changed, and there's a greater financial responsibility. There's some big projects coming up with the renovation and swap out of the town hall and a new fire station. And I believe I've got the financial background experience that the council's lacking right now to help navigate and guide the city through that. And then also, just given my background, one of the things with the city hasn't been a real strong emphasis on business, and I'd like to try to bring opportunities to bring some more business to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to questions which were solicited from the public on our website. And probably the one that's most on people's minds are the 3M settlement. And this question will go to Matt first. How would you like to see the 3M settlement moving forward? And which of the DNR draft proposals do you support?
Excellent question. I'm not fully versed and up to speed on all the different drafts yet. I will take time to get up to speed if elected to the council. When it comes to the settlement, my whole thing, I know there's been a lot of money that's been allocated, but not to make decisions in haste and allocate the funds too quickly, because that money was meant to bring long-term solutions for all residents, and I would hate to see the money spent and allocated too soon, only to have further problems down the road, because once it's gone, it's gone. So.
Thank you. The question now goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
So with the 3M settlement, I think there's a couple of settlements, and so I'm not sure exactly which one is referenced, but I'll speak to the 180 acres that was part of the settlement most recently to begin with. And I think right now the city is looking at options for what to do with that land, whether to bring water and sewer to it, to increase the value, to sell that land, to develop that land, put the city hall out there. So I think that there's all kinds of options being evaluated right now by the city. And I think once all the information is in and we can take a look at it, we can make the best decision for what's right for the city of Lake Elmo. As for the proposals, at this point, there are 3 different proposals, and I believe option 1 is the one that is preferred. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure I would support any of the 3, simply because there will be a cost to the city of Lake Elmo. In the way that it's structured, we're looking at potentially a $3 million in the future where we would have to put in boom stations to push the water. And so there is a cost to Lake Elmo.
Thank you. The question now goes to Jeff Holtz.
I appreciate that question, and the core issue of our clean water is why I volunteered to be on the 3M Settlement Commission. At this point, having had in-depth discussions with our co-trustees and with our various subject matter experts, option 1 is starting to look as the better option, but we are not at a point where we have made that determination, where we provide that feedback. We have a 45-day public comment period right now where we want to hear from the public before we make our recommendations regarding the settlement. So at this stage, in the case of option 1, as an example, which is where I'm leaning, we would have over 40 million to connect close users who are currently on polluted wells to municipal water. We would have funding for 100 years of O&M costs for those who will remain on private wells, but where we'll provide carbon filtration for them. The important thing that we try to focus on is that we create a solution that was long-term and sustainable, because we have to do this right the first time to serve the public. We all care about having clean water. None of us want to have to worry about our kids.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments? Yes, Katrina.
Yes, I would just want to add one key piece on the settlement that is it can be challenging for the general public to really understand the complexity. But as I understand it at a basic level, Lake Elmo has focused on finding clean water on the north side of our city with the new well that we are putting up in that area. What's being proposed is that our city connects with Woodbury, and instead of using clean water, we would be getting treated water. So it would no longer be focusing on finding that clean water and utilizing that well that we have in the northern part of Lake Elmo.
Thank you. Jeff Holtz.
To provide further context, that is a possibility. And the well that's being drilled currently as we speak is being paid for with expedited funds that we helped to create, because our well number 1 was polluted. At this point, myself, city staff, and our engineers provided very explicit feedback to the co-trustees last week about the potential of having an interconnect with Woodbury, and it is nowhere near at a stage where that would be done. We also need to keep in mind that if any water is polluted, it will be treated. And that is part of the 2007 consent order. If the health index is above a 1, no matter what, it will be treated for all of time. This funding is really about how do we go above and beyond a health index of 1.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Matt?
Nope.
Then we'll move on to the next question, and it goes first to Jeff. Have you personally been impacted by any of the current water issues?
I grew up in the East Metro. So I grew up in a town that is one of the 14 communities that has PFAS. I never knew when I was growing up that my parents, my siblings, myself were drinking polluted water. So yes, I likely have years of accumulated PFAS in my system. So again, I mentioned that earlier. This is one of the reasons why I volunteered to serve on this, to make sure that we do it right the first time. And it is impacting myself at this point and my family. We're on well number 1. And through no knowledge, through no fault of our own or anyone else's, our well was shut down. We're on municipal water. So is Katrina. She's in my neighborhood. And that was through no fault of our own. And that suddenly we had to have that worry, is the water safe? But again, that is why we are taking the steps to create this settlement and do it right the first time. One of the things we prioritized was creating an expedited process for situations such as our well number 1. It's being built currently in the northeast part of town. We also have to consider the 5-mile radius of no wells because of the White Bear Lake lawsuit. So this has been a very complicated process, but at the end of the day, it's about serving the public, and I believe we are doing just that.
Thank you. The question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, so no, thankfully in my neighborhood, we have our individual wells, and the neighborhood right next door to us, it's weird. There's, I don't know the science behind it, but there's a underwater or underground water table. So the neighborhood next door to us has issues with theirs. It has not infected any of the wells in my neighborhood. I do know there's some monitoring on my neighbor's well right next door. But thankfully my neighborhood has not been impacted yet, but it's always a possibility, right? If things shift and groundwater shift and seepage. So yeah, it's definitely an issue for everybody in the city. And I think it's just probably a matter of time before the wells in my neighborhood are impacted. But currently I think the last test like on my well was 2 years ago and it was fine. It was clean.
Thank you. The question now goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
Yes, so as Jeff mentioned, I am in a development, Easton Village, that was impacted by the shutdown of well number 1, which was quite a surprise after moving to the neighborhood to have that well shut down. And I believe at that point, the contamination levels had been lowered, the threshold for the shutdown, which led to that. So we definitely have been impacted by that and have real concerns about the quality of the water that we drink here. And so I know many in my neighborhood, including myself, have installed whole house filtration systems and RO systems to give us peace of mind. I think what's troubling about the water situation is that it was okay with the threshold level until they decided to lower the threshold level. So you always have to wonder, at what point will that threshold level of contamination be lowered once again? And science says that it will affect us. And so without having true clean water, there really will never be peace of mind, in my opinion, for residents that have been affected by the contaminated well.
Thank you. Additional comments, Jeff?
I just want to applaud both my fellow candidates on this one, because regarding what Matt was saying, the plume can easily move. And we can't predict it, we can't stop it. And that is why it's going to be critical that we have leaders in place who are able to speak to this and communicate it to the public. Katrina is spot on correct as well, that as the science evolves, our thresholds may change. One thing that we prioritize with the settlement is that we allocate dollars for future use in case that threshold lowers and suddenly more houses, through no fault of their own, are going to need remedies. And this is not going to go away.
Thank you. Anyone else, additional comments? Then we'll move on to the next question, which goes to Matt Howe first. And it's another water question. How can the city deal with high water and flooding issues?
Yeah, great question. I know that has been an issue in several neighborhoods. I mean, the best thing is to try to find other channels where we can redistribute the water, pumping it. I don't even know where the next, where you would pump it to. I mean, pumping it all the way to St. Croix is pretty far away, but we do need to find solutions, and we need to find some mitigator for that, because there's people's properties are getting flooded out. There's been streets that have been flooded out, and it needs to be addressed. So trying to find a spot where to pump it to when water levels hit a certain threshold, that we have an escape plan for it.
Thank you. The question now goes to Jeff Holtz.
This is something, as we've been door knocking, and we've hit over 1,500 houses at this point, it has been one of the top 3 items that has come up. And that's because it is widespread. It's not unique to one neighborhood. And the water table over the last several years has slowly been going up. And it's a conversation that's going to require multiple parties. It's going to require plenty of conversations. Because on one side, it is a watershed responsibility, and they are a taxing jurisdiction who has the authority to spend money for it. On the flip side, there's also city involvement in terms of our infrastructure. Just over, a couple blocks away from us, behind Reed Park, there was intense flooding there on a yearly basis. And this year, between there and Legion Lake, one of the short-term remedies was to bring out a 12-inch pipe and pipe it across neighborhoods. Eventually ended up in Easton Village, and it's dumping into our storm sewer, because from there to our outlets, we have a connection with St. Croix. That's not a long-term solution. That is a short-term remedy. And at this point, one of my priorities is that we sit down and do long-term analysis with our watershed district and with the city and the DNR, and that we have an honest conversation with the public about where we are at and what the possible costs may be, because this problem is not new, and potentially it might not go away.
Thank you. The question now goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
So the flooding, the local flooding and the high water are very complex issues that have been around for a while now and have had a fair amount of attention by the current city council. It's an issue that our city cannot solve alone. We don't have the purview for that. We don't currently employ a water engineer in our service in our city, and so we don't have the expertise. Additionally, it really falls to the Valley Water Branch watershed, as well as Washington County, to resolve this issue, to research it, with the city of Lake Elmo being a partner at the table advocating for our residents related to the flooding, because we do need a solution. But this issue is much bigger than Lake Elmo. We are seeing statewide that water levels in lakes have been rising. So it's not unique to us. So we're not going to be able to resolve this on our own. But again, it will require us to be good partners with these key entities that do have the capability, the expertise to do the work in the analysis. And again, for us to advocate for our residents for resolution.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Then here, seeing none, we will move on to the next question. It goes to you first, Katrina. What are your thoughts in regards to the 2 new land uses added to the 2040 comp plan of mixed-use business and mixed-use business park south of 10th Street?
Well, I think that we need to bring in more industry, more business for our tax base. And if we look at our comp plan, it's spelled out pretty clearly where we need that growth to occur, and it is south of 10th Street. And so I'm supportive of that approach, and I think it's good for Lake Elmo, again, to attract some business mixed use for that land. We not only need neighborhoods and rooftops to support businesses, but we need to bring in jobs in industry to help our community and to help our tax base.
Thank you. The question now goes to Jeff Holtz.
So as a member of the Planning Commission, we have come across multiple items now that are in this area, south of 10th Street and then north of 94. And I personally fully approve of how our comp plan has these set up. And the reason for that is we have an opportunity to make up for some past choices in our community that I believe were not wise. We need to be taking the steps to encourage businesses, and in our code we distinguish between business and commercial, but I'll combine it here. We need to find ways to encourage businesses to come here, whether that's for consumers to purchase goods, whether it's light industry and commercial activities to bring jobs. And the reason for that, based upon some of our previous conversations, is we need to broaden our tax base. In the past, we had opportunities for businesses to come here, and we said no. We allowed land to be annexed to a neighboring community, and instead that community got a target, got large businesses, and was able to broaden their tax base. We cannot continue to pay for our upcoming bills on rooftops alone. To be economically sustainable, we need to find ways to help encourage business owners and business leaders to come to that spot. And a big part of that's going to be having a stable and welcoming environment from leadership on down within our city.
Thank you. The question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, 100% agree with both what Katrina and Jeff said. You know, it's something I mentioned in my opening statement. This city made some decisions years ago to resist commercial development. In my opinion, that was a mistake. You think about if we have a spot for residents to work, to go spend their consumer dollars, all of that money stays in the city. And we're missing out on that. You know, we have residents going to Woodbury or to Stillwater to be a consumer. Instead, we could have business opportunities here. And one of the things the city does not have and should be something that's contemplated is some sort of economic development plan. You know, some cities have economic development officer. That's their whole objective, is to incent businesses to come, either low interest rate loans, tax breaks, things of that nature to attract business. And that's something Lake Elmo needs to focus on, because we don't have that. In that corridor, south of 10th Street, I mean, that's perfect. Easy access in and out of the freeway. You could try to attract a light industrial manufacturer, medical manufacturing, something that's clean and would bring jobs and would be a great add to the city.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments? Yes, Jeff.
One of the other benefits of this business district, in which we also can talk about the 180 acres that we received from 3M in our own city's lawsuit, is this is an area that was created by listening to the community. Our community has a very strong interest and core belief in having and maintaining green spaces. And we're able to do that. We've been able to have this area and prioritize it along one of the busiest corridors in the state of Minnesota. And we're still able to maintain our green spaces. So we're able to combine the interests and the goals of our community while hopefully being able to benefit in the long term.
Thank you. Any other additional comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next question. It goes to you first, Jeff. The Stillwater School District purchased land in 2018 to build a bus terminal in Lake Elmo. The district began using that facility last fall, but connections to the city sewer lines were never made. Can you please speak to the bus terminal dealings that changed between April and July of this year, as reported in the St. Paul Pioneer Press?
I wish I could have an hour to discuss this transparently because there's so much to it. I will shorten it to this. I'm on the planning commission. The property owner, which in this case is a school district, has a reasonable use of a property. They were allowed to use that through a conditional use permit. They were able to meet all requirements of that they were able to do themselves. A third party was responsible for bringing sewer and water to that spot in order to meet the conditional use permit. That didn't occur through no fault of the district. The city had an opportunity to work with the developer to get easements, and we chose not to. But at this point, the developer has the easements and is making progress to install, hopefully before the snow flies. On my end, we made a recommendation when the district came to us to say, in the short term, until that sewer comes, can we continue to use our property in a reasonable use, in a way that's allowed by the zoning? And the Planning Commission said yes, because we knew that in the long term, there is an agreement between the city and the developer to ensure sewer is there. And we said yes. At the time, the council disagreed, and that's where we're at right now. I will say in the long term, we need to make sure we are paying attention to legal ramifications of our decisions. And I made the city aware of this when an agenda item was posted, and I said legal need to be consulted, and it was removed.
And he got the stop sign. So the question now goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
Well, as I understand it, the agreement was between the developer and the school district, and the city played the part of giving the appropriate permits. But really, the issue really landed between the two private parties. I think much with many of the issues that come up through council is there's a lot of complexity and lots of information that isn't always possible to be public, and so it's difficult to know exactly all the details of a given agreement or the challenges of the situation. I believe that the city council needs to apply the standards of our rules, our policies consistently across the board, but partner when we can with different entities, whether it's a developer or the school district. But I think we have to be really careful about how we apply our standards so that we're not favoring one group over another and creating problems down the road if someone else raises a similar issue. And so there's a lot of complexity to this, and quite honestly, I don't know who is right and who is wrong in this big situation because it is so complex and there are so many layers to this and conversations that have not been made public that I don't want to point fingers in any one direction at this point because honestly, I don't have enough information.
Thank you. The question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, definitely. So I only know what I've read and what I've heard in talking with some of the school board candidates and then talking to residents. But to me, it seems pretty black and white. There was a contract and there was an obligation and it was not met. And so the bringing this to a legal matter is not always the best solution. That's just an expense for both sides. That's probably unnecessary. The school district and the developer had agreed to connect and bring sewer, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, probably the next best step is to request a temporary relief from the city, and then fulfill their end of the deal because they had committed and agreed. Because that section of the city is not zoned and it's not for septic. So it needs to be on sewer along with the rest of the comp plan and the sewer plan for the city. So, the school district, in my opinion, the school district is at fault, and a legal suit, doing what I do for a profession, no one wins but the attorneys. That's not the way to go.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments? Yes, Jeff.
And I couldn't agree more with Matt. We need to make sure that we are doing things in ways that don't bring legal culpability to us. And there are two separate agreements. One is between the developer and the district. The developer's agreement is between the city and the developer, and that is deeded to the land. And that's where there was an opportunity to help ensure that this was going to occur. But again, moving forward, the sewer is going to be there before the snow flies. And so the next stage is going to be when the district reapplies for a conditional use permit, and they will have met all obligations that are previously there, is to make that determination, will they be continued to allowed to have their reasonable use?
Thank you. Any other additional comments? Yes, Katrina.
I would just add that I think that we just need to look at this situation in hindsight and understand, if we can, how we might have done things differently on all sides, so that we don't run into this issue in the future. And I think there are some learnings from this. And if I am elected to the council, that's one thing that I will do, is go back in hindsight to better understand what happened and how we can prevent that from occurring in the future. But I'm very optimistic that the Bless Garage is going to be up and running and sewer will be in place, and the worst is behind us.
Thank you. Any additional comments, Matt?
No.
And we'll move on to the next question, which goes to you first. The Shelton Farm is considered a historic landmark in Lake Elmo. What do you see as a future for this beloved landmark?
Yeah, that's very close to me. So my house backs up to the North Star development, which backs up to that farm. So I know this was a pretty highly contested debate at the city. And honestly, I'm not quite sure if that was ever fully finalized and voted. I thought that area was slated for another residential development, and that the barn was going to stay, but the rest of the farm was going to go. That's the latest I know. Maybe my opponents here know more about that property than I do, but it is a shame. I mean, that is an icon. It's very visible as you drive into town. So it'd be a shame to see that disappear.
Thank you. The question now goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
I agree with Matt, and what I'm hearing as I've gone out and talked to various people in the community, new and long-term residents, is that is a very iconic symbol to Lake Elmo, and so to lose that would be quite a shame, I think. However, I mean, landowners have a right to sell their property, and so the owners can do just that. What I'd like to see, and what I think I have heard council discuss, is, in some way keeping the barn as an icon, as a symbol of some sort in some form, so it does remain in the community and it doesn't go away, whether it's just a structure or the full building itself. But certainly restoring the barn would be very, very costly, and I wouldn't imagine that would be something that the city could take on to restore that, because it is so old. But I would love to see something left that shows that iconic view that so many people in Lake Elmo appreciate, and so I would definitely support that and encourage that.
Thank you. Question moves to Jeff Holtz.
Part of serving community is listening. And the feedback has been explicitly clear to myself and my fellow planning commission members, especially, as Matt said, there was a proposal that came to us a few months ago, and it was at the concept stage. And we made very clear to the developer that some way, some shape or form, the community has a strong desire. There's a shared value of having that barn remain in a future manner. And eventually the proposal did not make it through council for other reasons. But my priority is that while the property has been sold to a developer, it has been sold at this point, we still have an opportunity to listen, to create opportunities where we are working together to come up with possible ideas. Developers do listen. There are ways that we have to come up with possible solutions. You could, as an example, I'm not saying this is what should occur. You could change and split the use up and have an area for business, and that barn would become a wedding reception hall, and you still have residential with a buffer next to it. That's one example. But I don't think we've had that opportunity to have those conversations as a community. We've seen it in the headlines, we've seen it in the papers, we've watched the meetings, but I don't think we've had a genuine conversation with the public and let them know the possible costs, and then let them inform us, what are they okay with?
Thank you. Additional comments, Matt?
Yeah, and I just want to add on to what Katrina said, because I am a firm believer in that. The city should not be telling a property owner, you know, you can't sell, you can't develop. A property owner has that right. As city council, you know, we can insert influence. If they're asking for exceptions or variances on the zoning, things like that, we can rule in on. You know, we had some issues with the development behind us. Some of my neighbors were upset about the development. And I told them, if you got a problem, go buy the land. I mean, that's, to me, it's that simple.
Thank you. Any other additional comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next question. It goes to Jeff first. If elected, what will your priorities be for your term?
My first priority is to listen and to be genuine and authentic. I'm not going to have all the answers. I'm not going to promise to. But my job as an elected official, just as how I've been serving the public for the last decade, is to understand what the community is prioritizing. Based upon feedback so far, again, in visiting over 1,500 residences, there seems to be a common thread of shared values, that we are being very thoughtful and deliberative about how our growth is occurring. As I mentioned earlier, that we are being very purposeful in how we invest and help to get the business parks going so we can broaden our tax base, focusing on the flooding picture, and also, again, based on the experience on the 3M settlement, we need to be having those discussions and decisions very soon. And I hope that by being on the council, some of the knowledge and experience of being on that settlement can be applicable, because we only get one chance to do this right. And those are just some of the priorities. But again, it comes down to listening. It comes down to being honest, because things will change over time. The issue 3 years from now might not be the same issue as it is today. And you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to be listening along the ways, because things will always change. But at the heart of it, you have to make sure you're serving the public.
Thank you. The question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, thank you. So my priorities, you know, you look at the history of Lake Elmo and with the city council, if you backtrack to the first couple of years I lived here, the city was very dysfunctional. Things have been somewhat normal and stable the last few years. So one of my priorities is to keep trending in a positive direction, keep things civil. I'd be a representative for everybody. One of the things I've noticed in attending some city council meetings, certain people, louder voices seem to carry more weight. That doesn't hold water with me. Everybody's got a voice, everybody's got an opinion. We need to listen to them and make a decision for the benefit of all. Not everybody's gonna always like everything we do as a council, but as long as we're addressing the majority, then we're accomplishing what we're supposed to do. And the other big thing for me is fiscal responsibility. You know, we were in the news 2-3 weeks ago, small, minor, you know, per house it was minor, but in the budget, missing a double line item and just causing more embarrassment, more reasons Lake Elmo's in the news. So fiscal responsibility, doing what the majority wants, those are kind of my main priorities.
Thank you. The question goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
One of my top priorities will be our infrastructure. As I mentioned in my opening statement, we've done a lot of growing in rooftops, but we've not been growing at the same pace with our infrastructure to support all these new homes, whether it's in our public works or our fire department, or our administrative offices. We have a lot of opportunities where we need to go back and take a look at what exactly we need to support a growing community. I'd like to see us have a long-term plan that really spells out, as our city grows, how do we need to evolve in our public safety model, from our firefighting structure to law enforcement, to ambulance coverage, traffic patterns, all those things that fit into public safety. But I'm also seeing a great opportunity for us to be looking at our infrastructure related to our building areas and our administrative staff. I think I heard recently that we have less staff now supporting administratively than we did in 2015. Our population has grown, and we have staff burnout. We have people that are not staying in their jobs because we have too much going on. We need to look for efficiencies, and we need to make sure that we are staffed appropriately for the current, but also as we continue to grow. So infrastructure is going to be huge for me.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Yes, Jeff.
I just want to give credit to both Katrina and Matt in this regard, because we definitely have very similar overlapping priorities here. And in being on the planning commission now in my second term, I've seen the staff turnover, and there are reasons for that. And one can be that we do have a need to continue to create stability within council in terms of the leadership that we have, but also what the environment is. We also need to have a conversation about what are the true costs for the services that we provide. We have staff that are doing 2 jobs. We have staff positions that are being unfilled, and that also creates turnover. And much of the services that...
And you got the stop sign. Any additional comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next question. It goes to you first, Katrina. What does transparency in public office mean to you? How would you improve transparency at the council level?
I am a huge proponent of transparency, and working in healthcare, we have been fostering a culture of transparency for years, where we share data, we share decisions, all the way down to the frontline staff from executives. And so I would expect the same in a city council. There should be no secrets about how we make our decisions, what data we are using to make our decisions. I know we will not be making everyone happy with every decision we make, but what I hear from people as I'm talking to them is, if we can just provide the rationale for why we make a decision in the direction that we do, then they'll be more likely to accept it. They may not agree with it, but if we're transparent in our process for reviewing solutions and having discussions and making decisions and communicating that, we will build trust in our community with our citizens and residents, which will be huge. We need to be more transparent, in my opinion.
Thank you. Question now goes to Jeff Holtz.
Transparency is beyond critical. As a former social studies teacher, this is a concept that we talk about all the time in what we expect from our elected leaders. The last thing you want to have is a set of decisions where people are wondering, where'd that come from? Because whether it's the right or wrong decision, if people are questioning how it came to be, that takes away the legitimacy of the institution, and they lose trust in your elected leaders. And we don't want to go down the road again of having our constituents not trust our leaders in our council. And one way you do that is by over-communicating, by taking every possible way to find new ways to bring information to the public. Because it's more than just council meetings. You can have you can make sure every council member is posting updates to their social media. You can have gathering events where 1 or 2 council members is providing feedback on what occurred and what may be coming up. There are many ways you can do it. The priority for me is stopping when it says stop. Oh, it was 15.
You got 10 seconds.
So the priority for me is making sure that we are bringing the public along. These decisions matter, and if the public has a feeling that they don't know how it came to be, then we are failing in our job.
Thank you. The question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, so this is one of the issues that kind of drove me to get more involved in the city in the last couple of years was inconsistency in communication and lack of transparency. I agree with Katrina and Jeff. I mean, that's what I do every day at work. You know, when you're talking to business owners, and usually my customer base is having some issue, and sometimes it means that we're not funding the business anymore, and so the business owner is losing his company. It's a very difficult conversation to have, but when you're transparent and you're straightforward and you explain why, you build some trust, you build some rapport, and that's what the council, you know, like I said, things have progressed and they've gotten better the last couple of years. I think it needs to keep progressing further and get even better. If we make an exception or give a variance to a particular homeowner for whatever reason, we should be able to justify and explain why they got that variance when his neighbor down the street didn't. And some of that inconsistency will go away. It'll build trust with the residents, and maybe some of the dysfunction that we can keep that away from coming up again.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments? Yes, Katrina.
I would add that part of that transparency is really being good about documenting why we make a particular decision. As I've sat through a few of the council meetings recently, things have been discussed that were based on decisions that were made years ago, and nobody really knew why the decision was made. And there's no history to go back to because no one on the current council was part of those discussions. And so I think we owe it to future councils to have it documented. And I also think that transparency is how our citizens can hold us as city council members accountable for the work that we do on their behalf.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Jeff?
So we experienced this firsthand a couple weeks ago on the Planning Commission. And a property owner came in for a variance to get rid of some rules that were in place. And they were put in place 30 years ago. And we could not find the records, the findings of fact for why they occurred to begin with, which makes it extremely hard to make authentic and genuine and information-driven decisions. The other aspect with this is that when you are communicating and building trust, there are going to be situations where the community is going to disagree or agree. If they trust you and they understand you are transparent and followed a process, you're allowed to still continue to move forward.
Thank you. Additional comments, Matt?
No, I don't have any. No.
Then we'll move on to the next question, and it goes to Jeff first. What qualification do you think sets you the most apart from the others seeking this office?
I don't think I am set apart from the others seeking this office. I think we have 3 highly qualified candidates. I will say what makes me different is the experiences and the skill sets. We each are different people. In my case, I am a civil servant. I have served the public for over a decade, and I want to continue to be able to serve my community as best I can. I understand and I know that listening along the way and being honest and transparent are key skills that can help in being a city council member. I believe that having the experience of listening to the public as a planning commissioner and finding solutions for our clean water will be very applicable on the city council. But on the flip side, I'm simply a member of the community. I'm a parent trying to raise 2 kids with my wife in this great town of Lake Elmo. My key is I want to be able to do whatever I can to serve my community.
Thank you. The question goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, so I agree with what Jeff said. One of the things that I like about this election is that when I talk about trending positive direction and avoiding some of the dysfunction of the past, I'm very pleased with the candidate pool. I think we all have similar values, and we have things that were consistent themes there. So, but the difference, what I think what separates me is my finance background, my leadership. I know I manage a team of I think I have 24, 25 direct reports. The financial aspect of what my career has afforded me to do. You know, I've been involved in large construction projects with several clients. I think that is lacking on the council, and I think that's something that separates me. We all live here. We all love this city. We all frequent what used to be our local coffee shop, and so there's a lot of consistent themes amongst the group. But I think with my difference is my finance background, which should fill a need with this growing city and growing budget.
Thank you. Question goes to Katrina Beckstrom.
And I would agree with Jeff and Matt. I think we are three very different candidates with different backgrounds that would bring different things to the council. And so it boils down to what is needed most. I think what sets me apart from Matt and Jeff is my public service background, where I am boots on the ground working on an ambulance part-time, seeing firsthand what the public safety structure looks like, the challenges that our own fire department, law enforcement, our Lakeview ambulance that services our area, all are facing on a daily basis. We're going into a process of building a new fire hall, which will require people on the city council who have that understanding of public safety to make sure that we build it for the future, for the growth of the community, but what's best for our firefighters and our law enforcement. I also think my robust history in a very complex integrated healthcare system has really given me some great skills to be able to go in and redesign processes and build efficiencies. Working in healthcare, you don't have a lot of dollars. You can't just add staff when you need to get work done. And so I can look at things creatively and innovatively that isn't necessarily going to raise taxes, but leverage the resources we have.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next question, and it goes to you first, Katrina. Please share with us your involvement in community affairs in Lake Elmo.
Sure. So I've served on the Public Safety Committee for the past 3 years, which has been a wonderful opportunity that has given me quite a look into our current public safety structure, but also the city government, and getting to understand better the linkages between City Council and our subcommittees. And I think that certainly is an opportunity area for more growth there. I was also involved in the interview panel process for the new fire chief that we hired for the city. I believe he started on Monday, which is very exciting. And I'm excited for the changes that we'll see in that fire department. And I think he is a great add to that. And so to this point, that's how I've contributed to the local community. But as I mentioned before, I continue to be boots on the ground, working side by side with public safety professionals in my part-time job as an EMT on an ambulance service. And so I'm giving back to multiple communities at this point.
I see that Justin Bloyer has checked in. Justin, we are still in the middle of this forum. Come back later. All right, the question now goes to Matt Howe.
Yeah, thank you. So with 3 kids, I'm an active parent. I've coached numerous sports teams for all 3 of my kids. So I've been highly active in the community through that. Volunteering, working, doing different things at Lake Elmo Elementary School when I can. I'm not involved civically, haven't done anything with the city other than attend a few meetings in the last couple of years and be a spokesperson for some of the issues with my neighborhood and present and speak at council. But I am very active in the community, use all the parks. I'm part of a run club. We run through Sunfish. We run through Lake Elmo Park Reserve. A couple times a year we go along and pick up garbage. My kids and I do that along 43rd and Lake Elmo Avenue. So I feel like I'm pretty active in the community. I just have not put myself out there in this with a role with the city.
Thank you. Question goes to Jeff Holtz.
What I'm looking forward to is when my kids are old enough to do sports and I can do the coaching like Matt has. Hopefully that'll be in the next while once we're past COVID. As was mentioned earlier, I'm in my 2nd term as a appointed member of the Planning Commission. And we're dealing with the zoning, ordinances, variances, things that are directly applicable to being able to succeed on the council. I am on the 3M settlement team, as was discussed earlier. I also was city planning representative for the school district's long-term planning team, in which our goal was to look at the data and find the best ways to utilize facilities on behalf of students in the long term. And that was a substantial process. And one of the most important things for me about that process is that we put various subject matter experts from a litany of fields together in a room, said, sit down, look at the data, and spit a solution out. And we put out over a 100-page solution. And what to me it showed is that people can come together and find solutions to serve our community. And those are just 3 examples. But in the future, I hope to continue to be able to serve our community. This is our town, and we deserve to have leadership that is serving us.
Thank you. That was our last question, and we'll now move on to closing statements, which will go in reverse alphabetical order from opening statements. So we'll begin with Matt Howe.
All right, thanks again for putting this together. Like I said, I feel like I have very worthy candidates. I think the city would be in a good footing with any one of us. You know, I've lived here for 6 years, very active parent. We love living here. I care about this city, and I would like to see the parks maintained. We have a lot of great amenities here, and I think we can continue to improve on those. And I think my finance background fills a much needed void in the city. You know, no guarantees that I can avoid an accounting error that we had, but you know, I am pretty thorough, and I think I bring a different perspective that has not been on the council, on the current council, and even with my current candidate pool. So again, I thank you for putting this together. I appreciate being invited. Thank you.
Thank you. Next with his closing statement is Jeff Holtz.
Well, once again, thank you to the White Bear Lake Area League of Women Voters for this opportunity. If your long history of helping to inform voters. And we have key differences amongst our community, but we also have many shared values. We all want a safe and healthy and welcoming community for ourselves, for our children, and for our future. Elections are that opportunity to be able to say who we want to be our authentic leaders who will act upon those shared values. As a former social studies teacher, I do believe in the value of having honest elected leaders who will take the time to listen, who will be driven by information, who don't promise to have all the answers, but will always strive to be serving others and look to our future. Lake Elmo residents, that's why I want to serve you and contribute to that shared future by serving on the Lake Elmo City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next with her closing statement is Katrina Beckstrom.
Once again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and to everyone who chooses to watch this at home to educate themselves about the candidates for Lake Elmo City Council. I'm really not that different than anyone watching this. I'm a parent, I'm a partner, I'm an animal and a nature lover, I'm a public servant who was simply drawn to Lake Elmo because of the character and the sense of community, and who simply wants a council body that uses common sense decision making, is void of personal agendas, and will protect all the things that makes Lake Elmo so unique. My commitment to you, the citizens of Lake Elmo, is to be an educated and informed community leader who is open-minded and willing to listen to, respect, and appreciate varying perspectives. I will foster a culture of transparency in the decision-making process and be held accountable for those decisions I make as your council representative. But most importantly, I am committed to continuing the positive path the City Council has been on since the last election. I will be honored to have your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the 3 candidates for 2 positions on the Lake Elmo City Council. Thank you, candidates, for coming forward to run and for speaking with voters about issues. Thank you to our viewers for watching and for your interest in becoming informed voters. We will put all the forums on our YouTube channel, and you will find links to the recordings for all of the candidate forums on the League White Bear Lake Area website, which is www.lwv-wbla.org. You can request an absentee ballot now on the Secretary of State's website, which is minvotes.org. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can also do that online or when you go to vote. Make your voice be heard in the general election by voting by November 3rd. Thank you.